Morning. Today we're going to start a two-part discussion on depression. Uh, just want to remind you that we are dealing with the symptoms of anticipatory grief. That's grief that happens before someone passes away. That's grief that happens before your loved one passes away, and it's normal. So we're going to talk about one of the symptoms today, and that's depression. And like I said, I'm going to break this up into 2 days because it's a lot of information. So what I'm telling you about is based on a book called the American Psychiatric Association Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. I want you to know that's where this information is coming from. So I'm not making this up, and I'm not going based on any kind of personal experience that I might have with depression. So what I'd like to do is talk about the signs and symptoms. Now, some of these symptoms are going to be normal, just a normal part of life, or a normal part of becoming, a caregiver and caregiver strain. But if you're having these symptoms more than normal, more since you've become a caregiver, it's something you really need to look into. So the symptoms include becoming easily agitated or frustrated. So if you're normally a person who really doesn't get, hyper excited or hyper frustrated or hyper angry over things, and now you're doing that, that could be a sign of depression. Feelings of worthlessness or guilt, just being down on yourself, feeling guilty about the situation you're dealing with managing your parents' condition, blaming yourself for things that are out of your control. Feelings of hopelessness, just feeling like, there's no hope. I mean, what you're thinking, what am I going to do? There's no hope. So if you're feeling that way, then that's a sign of depression. Thoughts of death, dying, or suicide. Anytime you have thoughts of it, then that's something that's really serious, something you really need to look into. If you are having disturbed sleep, if you were normally someone who could just really go to sleep and stay asleep throughout the night and wake up at a normal time, and now all of a sudden you can't sleep through the night, or you've developed insomnia, then that could actually be a sign of depression. Fatigue or loss of energy. It's normal to be tired as a caregiver, but if you are excessively tired and you just don't have that much energy, you just can't, you feel like you're dragging yourself along through each day, then that could be a sign of depression. One of the major signs is loss of interest or loss of pleasure in, usual activities. So if you were normally a scrapbooker and you just loved scrapbooking, and now all of a sudden you don't even want to look at the materials, then that might be a sign. If you're normally a golfer and you can't wait to get out on the links, and now all of a sudden you could just care less about that, then that's something you really need to look into, because that's a strong sign of depression. If you're having difficulty thinking or concentrating, even on the simplest things, you just got brain fog, then that's something you need to look into as well. If you have changes in your appetite or changes in your weight, all of a sudden you just don't want to eat. Food just doesn't seem appealing to you, or you're eating more junk food, or you're eating more and more and more than you normally would. You're eating foods that you normally wouldn't eat, and you're just gaining weight from that. If you're having physical symptoms that don't respond to treatment, physical symptoms like headaches, if you normally are not someone who has headaches, or if you have digestive disorders and pain, pain that you hadn't had before you became a caregiver, that could be a sign of depression. One more thing I want you to understand is that, these kinds of feelings come and go for everyone. But if these symptoms persist for 2 weeks or more, you need to consider the possibility that you have clinical depression. But, and this is a strong but before you form your own conclusions, before you start getting freaked out and say, oh, I have depression or anything like that, you have got to see your medical doctor first. There are medications and some medical conditions like thyroid disease or vitamin deficiencies that look just like all of these symptoms. So like I said, before you just, start panicking and thinking that you have this condition, then I strongly suggest that you go see your doctor, and he or she can perform different kinds of lab work and physical examinations to make sure that they can rule out the possibility of other conditions. Now, here's the thing. If depression is left untreated, it could lead to emotional and physical problems. People don't realize that, but the brain and the body are connected. So if you're experiencing a mental health condition, it's going to affect your body, and vice versa. If your body is experiencing a lot of trauma and a lot of change, then it can affect your mental health. So if it's left untreated, it can lead to emotional and physical problems. It can also affect your quality of life, as well as the quality of care that you can give to your loved one. Depression isn't a sign of weakness. I know you've heard that before, and some people believe it, some people don't. But it's not a sign of weakness. It's not something that you can just shake off. It is a medical condition that needs to be treated. The earlier treatment begins, the earlier you'll feel better. Treatment commonly, you know what, I'm so sorry for what you hear in the background. My dogs are up and running around the house. So please forgive that sound or those sounds. The earlier treatment begins, the earlier you're going to feel better. And treatment normally involves a combination of medication, therapy or counsel, and support from loved ones and social support. So like I said, that's a lot of information, and you're probably going to have to look at this video more than once to get everything that I said, to remember everything that I said. But tomorrow we're going to talk about medication, counseling, and other ways that you can cope with depression. So I hope this helped, and you take care. Talk to you tomorrow.